I never thought I'd make it this far in life, but here I am, Camilla Mitchell, Cam to my friends, 28 years old and living my dream in a $2.8 million Manhattan penthouse. The renovations on my new place are still ongoing. I'm having Italian marble installed in the master bath next week, and the $12,000 monthly mortgage payments still make me catch my breath, but it's mine, all mine. After 6 years of dominating Manhattan's luxury real estate market and breaking the $10 million annual sales mark, I finally have something truly spectacular to show for it. Getting here wasn't easy. I still remember those grueling days after graduating from Princeton, juggling my real estate license studies with a junior analyst position at Goldman Sachs. During the day, I'd shadow experienced brokers showing multi-million-dollar properties, desperately trying to sound more confident than I felt in my single suit from H&M. Then I'd rush to my evening shift at Goldman, crunching numbers until 3 a.m., my eyes burning from staring at spreadsheets. But I kept pushing, building my client base one luxury sale at a time, until I became the youngest member of the $1 Million Club at 25. Sometimes, when I'm alone in my penthouse looking out over Central Park, I wish Dad, Ethan Mitchell, could see me now. He always believed I could make it to the top, always said his little girl would conquer Manhattan someday, but he never got to see it happen. He passed away during my freshman year at Princeton, just when I was starting to really make him proud. That's when everything changed, and not just because of losing him. Mom, Regina, remarried within a year to Harrison Drake, Harry to his country club friends. Harry seemed polished and proper at first, but he came with baggage, 2 entitled kids, Piper and Wesley, who were 15 and 14 at the time. I tried to be understanding, I really did. Mom deserved happiness after losing Dad, but Harry had other ideas about how our family's legacy should be erased. This place needs a complete overhaul, he declared one day, barely 3 months after moving into our Upper East Side brownstone. I came home from Princeton that weekend to find him having contractors strip away the custom woodwork Dad and I had restored together. All of Dad's photographs, including his prized black and white New York series, were gone, packed away somewhere I couldn't find them. Where are Dad's photographs? I asked Mom that evening, trying to keep my voice steady despite the knot in my throat. She barely looked up from her issue of Town and Country. Oh darling, Harry thought it might be uncomfortable, you understand, right? We need to move forward with the times. But it wasn't just the photographs. My childhood bedroom, the one Dad had helped me decorate with a hand-painted mural of the Manhattan skyline, became Piper and Wesley's gaming room. They filled it with massive screens and expensive gaming setups, erasing every trace of the life I'd lived there. You can use the maid's room when you visit, Mom said brightly, as if relegating me to the servants' quarters was a perfectly normal solution. The room was barely large enough for a twin bed and a small desk, but what could I say? I was just the visiting daughter now. Piper and Wesley made it clear they didn't want any reminder of the Mitchell family legacy around. Every time I came home from Princeton, there'd be some new accident, my collection of first edition novels mysteriously water damaged, my art portfolios from high school accidentally thrown out, my face mysteriously cropped out of all the family photos in the living room. Life settled into a predictable rhythm after that. I graduated Princeton summa cum laude, launched my career at Manhattan's top luxury real estate firm, and tried to maintain some semblance of a relationship with Mom. Our calls became shorter and less frequent, but I still made the effort, visiting their Upper East Side brownstone every few weeks, enduring the converted maid's quarters and the barely concealed contempt from my step-siblings. Look who finally remembered we exist, Piper would say, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness and old money pretension. She was 25 now, still living off Harry's trust fund, still treating me like an unwelcome intruder in my childhood home. Wesley, at 24, wasn't any better. He'd make cutting remarks about my new money lifestyle, my work ethic, my clothes, anything he could weaponize. And Harry would sit there with that condescending smile, occasionally adding his own carefully crafted barbs. Luxury real estate, he'd say during dinner, swirling his $500 Bordeaux. Must be exhausting, showing empty apartments to trust fund babies all day. Some of us manage actual investment portfolios. Mom would just sit there, perfectly manicured hands folded, pretending not to notice the tension. It was like she'd disappeared completely into their world of old money and social registers, leaving no room for her self-made daughter. I tried to rise above it all, channeling my energy into building my empire. My client list grew to include CEOs and celebrities, my commission checks regularly exceeded 6 figures, and I became one of Manhattan's most sought-after luxury brokers. But then came that dinner, that awful final straw dinner at Le Bernardin. Piper was in rare form that night, taking shots at everything from my Chanel handbag, trying too hard, to my choice of vintage, nouveau riche. I sat there, gritting my teeth through the $400 tasting menu, until she went too far. Must be nice, she sneered over her third glass of champagne, having mommy's Upper East Side connections to help you break into luxury real estate. Some of us actually have to earn our place in society. Something inside me snapped. 10 years of suppressing my rage, of enduring their sophisticated form of psychological warfare, came pouring out. Earn your place? I laughed, the sound sharp enough to turn heads at nearby tables. That's rich, coming from someone who's pushing 30 and still living off daddy's trust fund. When was the last time you did anything besides attend charity galas and judge people who actually work for a living? The silence that followed was absolute. Piper's perfectly composed facade crumpled, and she fled the restaurant in tears, leaving behind her half-eaten $175 entree. Harry stood up, his face flushed with rage beneath his expensive tan. You pretentious little social climber, he spat. How dare you speak to my daughter that way? I turned to Mom, hoping against hope that she'd finally stand up for me. Instead, she delicately dabbed her lips with her napkin, disappointment etched across her Botoxed features. I can't believe you'd say something so gauche, Camilla. That's not how Mitchell women behave. That's when I finally accepted the truth, nothing would ever change. Mom would always choose her carefully curated new family over me. I left Le Bernardin that night with tears streaming down my face, but they weren't tears of sadness, they were tears of liberation. For the first time in my life, I felt completely done with their world of inherited privilege and social obligations. The next morning, my phone was flooded with messages from Harry's side of the family, all expressing their horror at my nouveau riche outburst. None of them mentioned the years of subtle degradation I'd endured. None of them seemed to care about the psychological toll their refined cruelty had taken. You've really crossed a line this time, Mom texted from her summer house in the Hamptons. Until you apologize to Piper and Harry, I think it's best you don't attend any family functions. I stared at that message on my iPhone 14 Pro Max for a long time before typing my response. Don't worry, I won't. The weeks that followed were surprisingly peaceful. I threw myself into my work, closing deal after multi-million-dollar deal. My high-net-worth clients loved my direct approach, and my commission checks reflected it. I started looking at new cars, not to show off, but because I'd always wanted one particular model since I was a little girl watching Wall Street movies with Dad. The day I drove my Mercedes-AMG GT63S off the lot, writing a check for $180,000 without flinching, I felt like a different person, more confident, more successful, more genuinely me. I couldn't resist sharing a few photos of my new Mercedes-AMG on Instagram. The likes and comments flooded in from my luxury real estate network, but I wasn't prepared for what happened next. My phone lit up with Mom's face, her perfect Upper East Side smile frozen on my screen. After 3 months of calculated silence, she was suddenly calling. I let it go to voicemail initially, but she persisted, calling 4 times in succession. Finally, I picked up. Hello? Camilla, darling, her voice dripped with practiced sweetness. I've been thinking about you constantly. We simply must repair this unfortunate situation. Join us for dinner tomorrow night at Daniel's? I almost laughed out loud. 3 months of radio silence, and now, right after I posted photos of my $180,000 Mercedes, she suddenly wanted to reconcile. I'm not sure that's wise, Mom. Please, sweetheart. I've spoken with Harry and the children. They feel absolutely dreadful about everything. We all want to make amends. I should have declined. I should have seen through the obvious manipulation, but some part of me, that naive, hopeful part that never seemed to learn, wanted to believe in this sudden change of heart. The next evening, I pulled up to the brownstone in my gleaming new Mercedes. Harry was waiting in the entrance, and I swear his carefully maintained composure slipped when the AMG's engine purred to a stop. Piper and Wesley appeared in the doorway, both wearing expressions I'd never seen before, a calculated mixture of respect and greed. Darling, you're here. Mom rushed out in her Chanel suit. Oh, sweetheart, we've missed you terribly. The dinner was surreal. Harry praised my entrepreneurial spirit. Piper inquired about my highest-profile clients with seemingly genuine interest. Wesley even pulled out my chair and asked about the Manhattan luxury market. I felt like I'd stepped into some bizarre parallel universe where they'd suddenly developed respect for new money. Between courses, Mom cornered me in their recently renovated kitchen. I had a serious discussion with them, she whispered, her French manicured nails digging into my arm. They realize how terribly they've behaved. They want to begin anew. I wanted to believe her, God, how desperately I wanted to believe that they'd finally accepted me. And for a while, it seemed genuine. I started visiting more frequently. The sophisticated put-downs ceased. The backhanded compliments vanished. They all suddenly showed intense interest in my life, my work, my success in the luxury real estate market. But then I started noticing patterns. Every visit, without fail, the conversation would turn to their living situation. It started subtly. This brownstone simply isn't keeping up with the times, Harry would sigh, glancing pointedly in my direction. The foundation needs extensive work, Mom would add, and the property taxes are becoming quite burdensome. Piper and Wesley would chime in with their own carefully crafted complaints: outdated floor plan, insufficient staff quarters, lack of modern amenities. Each time, they'd look at me expectantly, waiting. I tried deflecting these conversations, but they grew increasingly persistent. One evening, as I was leaving, Mom followed me to my car. You know, darling, she said, trailing her fingers along the AMG's carbon fiber trim, you're doing remarkably well now. It must be wonderful having such financial freedom. The way she emphasized financial freedom made my skin crawl. I was beginning to understand their sudden change of heart, but I pushed the thought away. They were family, after all. Perhaps they had genuinely changed. Then Mom dropped the bomb about her upcoming 55th birthday. She mentioned it casually over afternoon tea at Bergdorf's, but there was nothing casual about the way everyone at the table focused on me. It's quite a milestone, she said, stirring her Darjeeling. I've been considering how to commemorate it properly. I took the bait. Don't concern yourself with the planning, Mom. I'll handle everything. The look that passed between her and Harry should have triggered my suspicions. The way Piper and Wesley suddenly became absorbed in their phones should have raised red flags. But I was still so desperate to believe in this new version of our family that I ignored all the warning signs. I decided to spare no expense, a private party at my friend Zara's exclusive restaurant downtown, followed by a surprise first-class trip to Hawaii for the whole family. The thought of spending nearly $50,000 on Harry, Piper, and Wesley made me nauseous, but I convinced myself it was worth it to make Mom happy. Planning Mom's milestone celebration became my singular focus outside of work. I called Zara immediately at her Michelin-starred restaurant. I want this to be absolutely spectacular, I told her. Budget is not a concern. Leave everything to me, darling. Zara's enthusiasm was infectious. Even with my friends and family rate, this will be an evening no one forgets. If only she knew how prophetic those words would be. When Mom sent her guest list, my heart sank. Out of 50 people, 45 were Harry's connections, all old money names from the social register. I scanned the list repeatedly, searching for familiar names from Dad's side. Aunt Adelaide, who'd practically raised me after Dad died, wasn't there. Uncle Theodore, who taught me about photography and New York architecture, was missing. Cousin Fiona, who'd been more sister than cousin throughout my childhood, was nowhere to be found. I added them to the list without consulting Mom. They deserved to be there, even if she'd erased them from her new life. When I called Aunt Adelaide to invite her, she paused for a telling moment. "Are you certain about this, sweetheart?" she asked gently. The last time I encountered Regina at the Met Gala, she made it abundantly clear we weren't part of her social circle anymore. "I'm absolutely certain," I said firmly. "You're my real family." The following week, I visited the brownstone to discuss party details. Piper cornered me in the marble foyer the moment I arrived. "So," she attempted casual conversation but couldn't quite mask her calculating tone, "the party at Zara's is your gift to Mom?" I caught Mom shooting her a warning glance, but chose to ignore it. "That's part of it," I replied carefully. "I have something else planned as well. A surprise." The way they all reacted to the word surprise should have been my first warning. Harry and Mom exchanged meaningful looks, while Wesley suddenly abandoned his affected disinterest. "A surprise?" Mom leaned forward in her designer armchair. "What kind of surprise, darling?" I just smiled enigmatically. "You'll have to wait and see." The next hour was excruciating. They took turns trying to extract information, while dropping increasingly unsubtle hints about real estate. Harry led me on a calculated tour of every imperfection in the brownstone. Mom sighed theatrically about how the space was beneath their station. Piper and Wesley tag-teamed with complaints about sharing the third-floor bathroom despite their trust funds. "You know, Camilla," Harry said, gesturing at some minor water damage, "with your expertise in luxury properties, you must have extensive knowledge of premium real estate opportunities." I nodded non-committally. "The Manhattan market is quite active currently. And successful brokers like you must have exceptional connections," Mom added, with pointed emphasis. I feigned ignorance of their implications. "My network is certainly valuable for sales." "Sales," Piper muttered into her Hermes scarf. "Right." The evening crawled by, with them circling ever closer to their true objective. I kept deflecting, telling myself it would all be worthwhile when they saw the Hawaii surprise. The night of Mom's birthday celebration arrived, and Zara had created absolute magic. Her restaurant was transformed, with crystal chandeliers casting soft light over elegant floral installations and immaculately set tables. I arrived early to ensure everything was perfect, including the package containing the Hawaii surprise, first-class tickets and Four Seasons reservations for the entire family. Dad's relatives arrived first, looking slightly out of place in this ultra-luxe setting. Aunt Adelaide hugged me tightly and whispered, "You've become an extraordinary woman, Camilla. Ethan would be so proud of what you've accomplished." I fought back tears. "Thank you, Aunt Adelaide. Your presence means everything." Harry's family arrived en masse, a wave of designer labels and entitled attitudes flooding the restaurant. They immediately commandeered the prime tables, effectively relegating Dad's family to the periphery. I watched this social power play unfold but held my tongue. That night was supposed to be about healing family wounds, not highlighting class divisions. Mom, Harry, Piper, and Wesley made their fashionably late entrance. Mom was stunning in Valentino, but her expression soured noticeably when she spotted Dad's relatives. "What are they doing here?" she hissed through her society smile as we embraced. "Their family, Mom. They wanted to honor your milestone." Her expression hardened, but before she could respond, Harry's sister, Janet, launched into the toasts. "To my dearest brother, Harrison," Janet raised her crystal flute, "who elevated this family and gave them the sophisticated guidance they so desperately needed." I watched Dad's relatives tense at the thinly veiled insult. Uncle Theodore seemed ready to speak, but Aunt Adelaide touched his arm, subtly shaking her head. The toasts continued in this vein, each of Harry's connections taking turns praising his social standing and his children's privileged upbringing, celebrating what they called their perfect society family. Mom glowed with social validation, while I felt my stomach turn with each backhanded compliment about our humble beginnings. Finally, my moment arrived. I stood up, holding an elegantly wrapped Hermes box containing the Hawaii surprise. "Mom," I began, my voice wavering slightly, "you've always spoken about exploring the world, about creating lasting memories. For your birthday, I wanted to give you something truly exceptional." I presented her the box. She accepted it with an odd expression, not anticipation, but something closer to calculation. As she unwrapped it, the restaurant fell silent. Mom stared at the first-class tickets and Four Seasons resort portfolios, her face darkening with each passing second. "What exactly is this supposed to be?" It's a luxury family vacation," I explained, bewildered by her reaction. "First-class tickets to Hawaii, 2 weeks at the Four Seasons, all expenses covered, for everyone." The explosion that followed was unprecedented in its viciousness. "A vacation?" Mom's voice could have frozen champagne. "You imagine we want a vacation?" Harry stood up, his carefully maintained composure shattering. "This is your idea of a suitable gift, after all our evident hints?" "Hints," I echoed, though horrible understanding was beginning to dawn. Piper leaped up next. "We've been spelling it out for months what Mom truly desired, a brownstone. She wanted a proper Upper East Side home, you obtuse, ungrateful brat." The restaurant fell deathly silent. Zara, watching from near the wine room, looked mortified. "A brownstone?" I struggled to process their audacity. "You expected me to purchase you a multi-million-dollar property?" "We assumed you comprehended," Mom's voice dripped with aristocratic disappointment. "All those discussions about our living situation. How could you be so utterly blind?" I surveyed the room. Harry's social circle nodded in unified disapproval, while Dad's family sat in stunned disbelief. "I'm a luxury real estate broker," I stated carefully, fighting for composure. "I sell premium properties, I don't gift them. This 5-star vacation cost me over $50,000 as it is." "50,000?" Harry scoffed. "Please, we've seen your AMG. We know you can afford far more than some trivial holiday." That's when I snapped. I turned to Zara and announced clearly, "Please have security remove these people immediately. You can't do this." Mom's shriek shattered the refined atmosphere. "This is my birthday celebration." I snatched the Hermes box from her manicured hands. "Not anymore. And you don't deserve any of it." What followed was pure chaos. Harry's society friends hurled sophisticated insults as they were escorted out. Piper screamed about my à nouveau riche jealousy of their perfect society family. Harry spat every upper-class slur he could summon. Mom just stood there, radiating icy disappointment. After they departed, an elegant silence descended. Then Uncle Theodore stood, raised his crystal glass, and declared, "I believe it's time we honor the true patriarch of this family." To Ethan Mitchell, a remarkable father who would have been immensely proud of his daughter's integrity. We spent the remainder of the evening sharing stories about Dad, and for the first time in years, I felt surrounded by authentic family. The 2 weeks following the birthday catastrophe were unexpectedly serene. I immersed myself in work, showing luxury penthouses and closing multi-million-dollar deals as if nothing had changed. But everything had transformed. For the first time, I felt truly liberated, free from the manipulation, the social climbing pressure, and the constant need to prove myself to people who would never see past their own privilege. My phone remained notably silent. No calls from Mom, no texts from Piper or Wesley, no vitriolic messages from Harry. I knew the peace was temporary, but I savored every moment. During this period, I strengthened my bonds with Dad's side of the family. Aunt Adelaide invited me for intimate Sunday dinners in her modest but warm Upper West Side apartment, just like in my childhood. "You know," she reflected one evening as we enjoyed tea on her small balcony, "your father always worried about Regina, your mother. He recognized her desperate need to be taken care of by those with social status. He feared it would wound you deeply someday." I gazed into my teacup, acknowledging the truth in his words. He had seen it all along. I just wished I'd recognized it sooner. My first action after the party was canceling the Hawaii arrangements. Instead, I planned something more meaningful, a luxury Mediterranean cruise for Dad's relatives who had stood by me that night. They initially protested, but I insisted on showing my appreciation for their genuine love and support. I was finalizing the cruise details when my phone lit up with Mom's number. I almost declined, but something compelled me to hear her out. "Hello?" My tone remained neutral. "Camilla," Mom's voice was taut, controlled, no apology, no warmth, pure calculation. "We need to discuss recent events." I waited as she paused for effect. "What aspects specifically?" "Well, primarily, you mortified us in front of the entire social circle, but we can address that later. Currently, we have a more urgent matter." I could anticipate the direction, but I allowed her to continue. "Wesley had an unfortunate incident with his Porsche yesterday. Nothing severe, but the repairs will be quite costly. Given your current financial success, we thought." I cut her off with a sharp laugh. The sheer entitlement was almost admirable in its brazenness. "Let me ensure I understand this correctly," I said. "You're calling me, not to apologize for your appalling behavior at your birthday, but to request money?" "Don't be theatrical, Camilla," she sighed. "Family supports family. And speaking of support, since you've canceled the Hawaii arrangements, you could at least redirect those funds to us. It's the civilized thing to do." I sat in my penthouse office, phone pressed to my ear, listening to my mother's entitled demands with startling clarity. Everything crystallized in that moment, the years of sophisticated manipulation, the calculated kindness after witnessing my success, the birthday debacle. It had never been about family bonds. It had always been about what they could extract from my success. "Mom," I said quietly, interrupting her lecture about familial obligations, "I have allocated those funds. I'm sending Dad's family on a Mediterranean cruise." The silence that followed was absolute. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled with aristocratic outrage. "How dare you? Those people aren't even part of our social circle anymore. I'm your mother. We're your proper family." "No," I replied with newfound strength. "You forfeited that role the day you chose Harry and his children over me. You stood silent while they colonized my childhood home, while they erased every trace of Dad's legacy, while they treated me like some distant poor relation. You watched their sophisticated cruelty for years, and you did absolutely nothing. That's absurd. I always loved you. Love isn't sufficient, Mom. You failed to protect me. You never defended me. You allowed them to systematically exclude me from my own family. And now, you only acknowledge my existence because you think I can finance your lifestyle. After everything I've sacrificed for you. What exactly have you sacrificed? I challenged. Since Dad died, what have you actually done to support or encourage me? I financed my Princeton education. I built my reputation in luxury real estate single-handedly. I purchased my own Manhattan penthouse. The only time you express interest in my life is when you want to exploit my success. She began crying then, but I'd witnessed this performance too many times before. I'm your mother. You can't simply disown me. I'm not disowning you, Mom. I'm finally liberating myself. I harbor no ill will, but I can't remain entangled in your social climbing anymore. You, Harry, Piper, Wesley, you're not my burden to bear. Address your own problems. Finance your own lifestyle. Just remove me from your calculations. I ended the call and blocked their numbers, all of them. Then I sat there for a long time, studying the photographs on my desk. There was one of Dad and me at my Princeton graduation, both of us radiating genuine joy. Another of Aunt Adelaide and Uncle Theodore at last year's Christmas dinner. And a new one from Mom's birthday celebration, me, surrounded by Dad's family, all of us raising our glasses in tribute to his memory. These were my people. This was my authentic family. The next day, I returned to work as usual. I showed luxury properties to CEOs, negotiated multi-million-dollar deals, and finalized the Mediterranean cruise arrangements for my real family. Life continued, but it was fundamentally different now, more genuine, more peaceful.